Terror attack thwarted overseas. A taxi exploding outside a Liverpool hospital. Authorities identify the suspected bomb maker, a passenger killed in the blast. Now the terror threat across the UK has been raised tonight. Closing arguments now underway in the high-profile trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. Wisconsin prosecutors portraying the teen as a trouble-seeking active shooter. The defense claims he shot 3 men, 2 fatally in self-defense during the Jacob Blake protests. As the judge dismissed a misdemeanor weapons charge, and we learned details about the instructions to the jury. In Georgia, the other major courtroom drama, the judge rejecting a call for a mistrial by the defense in the Ahmaud Arbery case as Reverend Jesse Jackson watches from the courtroom 1 week after a defense attorney said he didn't want any more black pastors coming here. This is President Biden on the South Lawn today, signing his $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill into law. Everything from bridges to broadband, and a bipartisan victory for the first half of his domestic agenda, but with few Republicans there to applaud. And our new poll shows his job approval rating plummeting. So what will the future hold for his Build Back Better push? Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon surrenders to authorities before appearing in federal court, charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing a subpoena for information connected to the January 6th Capitol riots. His defiant message outside the courthouse for the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House, and the President himself.
We're going to go on the offense.
And BTW OMG, in a society more connected than ever, we take a closer look at the language across generations, from what all those acronyms and emojis really mean to which ones are already passé.
Sometimes I might have a thought that is not covered in only 4 emojis.
That's crazy. Okay, Boomer. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with dramatic closing arguments in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, the Illinois teen who killed 2 men during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, in the wake of the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Today, prosecutors laid out their case, claiming that Rittenhouse, then just 17 years old, was the real threat, raising his gun in a crowd in what they called an act of provocation. Defense attorneys are arguing that Rittenhouse acted in self-defense, showing a moment when he was kicked in the head before he opened fire in the street. Earlier today, the judge in the case dismissed a misdemeanor charge against Rittenhouse for illegally possessing the AR-15 style rifle he used, saying the law on possession was unclear. We also learned new details about the instructions to members of the jury who will soon begin the deliberation process. ABC's Terry Moran is at the courthouse in Kenosha and leads us off.
In his closing argument, prosecutor Thomas Binger using drone video from the night of the shootings to highlight what he says was the critical moment on that fatal night. Kyle Rittenhouse out in the crowd of protesters, putting down a fire extinguisher and raising his AR-15 rifle.
You're not allowed to run around and point your gun at people. This is the provocation. This is what starts this incident. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create.
It was Rittenhouse who was the real threat, Binger argued, mocking the defense claim that the teenager was acting in self-defense.
The crowd has the right to try and stop an active shooter. They have a right to protect themselves. The defendant is not the only one in the world who has the right to self-defense.
Defense lawyer Mark Richards firing back, showing the moment Rittenhouse got kicked in the head, arguing he wasn't an active shooter.
Kyle was not an active shooter. That is a buzzword that the state wants to lash onto. Whenever Kyle was there, he reacted to people attacking him.
And Rittenhouse's lawyer also went after the protesters, showing how downtown Kenosha was engulfed in flames and saying his client had been unfairly maligned by prosecutors from the start.
They had to do something. They had to charge the white supremacist, who isn't a white supremacist. Every person who was shot was attacking Kyle.
The defense has claimed all along that he was acting in self-defense. Terry Moran joins us now live. Terry, the day wrapped up just a short time ago. What comes next?
What comes next is the jury will begin deliberations, Lindsay. They'll begin tomorrow morning. They'll pick the final 12 of the jury from the 18 who have heard all of this evidence. The other 6 will be held in reserve as if they need a replacement. And they will get after what is now a very contentious case. The prosecution, in its closing argument there, you heard really turning the tables on the defense as much as they could. And they won't, the jurors, be able to consider one of the charges the prosecutors were most confident about, the gun charge charge in this case, unlawful possession of a weapon by a minor. The judge dismissed it this morning, saying the law, as written, didn't apply in this case. And so the prosecutors now really with these shootings and all of the lesser included charges. The jurors begin tomorrow. They will not be sequestered, and they will probably be at it for a few days. Lindsay?
And then today, the judge sent jurors out of the courtroom as more legal issues were hashed out again. Tell us about that.
Well, that was an unusual, even a rare moment. Yeah, that is a really important moment in a trial when the judge gives the jury the law, the instructions on the law. Jurors tend to listen to that very carefully so that they know what the roadmap is. And the judge sent him out of the courtroom. He was concerned that he might have confused them with something that he said. He did clean that up, but it was something you don't see a lot of usually.
And Terry, you've been following this case so closely. Anything stand out to you in the closing arguments today? Any surprises?
Well, what was a surprise, as I mentioned, Lindsay, was the prosecution, which has at times struggled in this case. Some of their witnesses seeming to help the defense, organization issues as well sometimes. But in summation, Prosecutor Thomas Binger really turning the table, saying that those people who were shot and who were chasing Kyle Rittenhouse were not a mob bent on attacking a victim. They were heroes. That was the word he used, going after an active shooter, that was really what they were doing, and that Kyle Rittenhouse, wasn't defending himself. He was the aggressor in that situation. It's hard to say whether or not it will work, but it certainly gives jurors a lot to think about. When the prosecutor got to the point, he said, he's not above the law. The same set of rules applies to everyone. You could feel the jury kind of focus in on that. That and a quarter will get your pack of gum. I never predict what juries are going to do, but you can for sure see that they are taking this very seriously. Lindsay?
And the governor even potentially calling on the National Guard to come in because you just don't know what might happen there. Terry Moran reporting in live for us from Kenosha. Thanks so much, Terry.
Thanks.
For more now, we bring in ABC News contributor Shauna Lloyd, an attorney with the Cochran firm. Thanks, as always, for joining us, Shauna. The prosecutor argued that under Wisconsin law, if you provoke an incident, you essentially lose the right to say that you acted in self-defense. He said that Rittenhouse provoked this by pointing his gun around. Is the law a bit more complex than that?
It is a slightly more complex than that, Lindsay, in that when it comes to provocation, it affects self-defense in that if you are the person that's engaged in an unlawful activity such that you provoke someone to attack you, you then cannot claim self-defense. Now, if you suddenly, the person doing the unlawful act believes they're in imminent harm or grave bodily harm, they must exhaust every effort to get out of the situation before they can resort to grave bodily harm. And that is the way it affects the self-defense argument. So it is a little bit more complex than they presented it.
And Rittenhouse was hit with a skateboard, which we've talked about before, that could possibly be considered a weapon. Rittenhouse's lawyer also described his client being chased. How strong was that defense?
It's going to be interesting because that's going to boil down to the perspective of the juror. To some people, they're going to see a skateboard and say that there's no way I thought I was in grave bodily harm's way. However, you're going to have other jurors that are going to see that and be like, I would have been terrified. So this part is really going to boil down to the perspective of these individual jurors and their life experiences.
This case seemed quite complicated, but yet it moved along rather rapidly. Would you say that the trial went smoothly, all things considered?
I don't know if smoothly is the word I'd use to describe it, Lindsay. The judge was very interesting, very vocal. You don't typically see that. There was a lot of issues between the state attorney and the judge. Typically, that wasn't very smooth. So I don't know if I would call this a smooth trial at all, although the judge was intent on pushing it through, and that he's done.
How tough do you think that this case will be for the jury? And if you had to predict, how long could deliberations take?
It's going to really depend on how, when they read those jury instructions, how clear they feel about it. A lot of juries, when it comes to self-defense, because there are things like provocation that they have to consider, they have to determine if they feel like self-defense applied, and then they don't consider the lesser included. So there's a lot of little nuances to this that I think the jury may take a little bit more time to make sure that they're being deliberate in each of the acts against each of the victims in this case.
Shauna Lloyd, I'm sure we'll be checking back in with you throughout the week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay.
After years of discussions spanning multiple presidents, at long last, it is Infrastructure Week in Washington. President Biden today officially signed that $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill into law this afternoon. It's the most significant investment in a generation in America's roads, bridges, ports, and more. But how soon will Americans see the benefits? Our chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega reports in from the White House.
Yeah. At the White House today, surrounded by lawmakers from both parties, President Biden signing that massive infrastructure bill, a key piece of his economic agenda, and now a campaign promise fulfilled.
My message to the American people is this: America's moving again, and your life is going to change for the better.
It is a much-needed win in the face of polls showing his approval sinking. Today, the president saying he's focused on what Americans are talking about at the dinner table and showing the country is catching up to other nations.
Now, according to the World Economic Forum, we rank 13th in the world. Well, that's about to change. Things are going to turn around in a big way. Because of this law, next year will be the first year in 20 years American infrastructure investment will grow faster than China's. We'll once again have the best roads, bridges, ports, and airports over the next decade.
The massive $1.2 trillion plan sets aside $110 billion to repair aging highways and bridges, $39 billion for public transportation, and $65 billion for high-speed internet. The president describing families struggling to find access.
No parent should have to sit in a parking lot at a fast food restaurant again, just so their child can use the internet to do their homework. That's over.
32 Republicans voted for the plan. Ohio Senator Rob Portman, a lead negotiator.
This is what can happen when Republicans and Democrats decide we're going to work together to get something done.
On the other side, moderate Kirsten Sinema of Arizona.
This is what it looks like when elected leaders set aside differences, shut out the noise, and focus on delivering results on the issues that matter most to everyday Americans.
For some Americans, the impact will be felt immediately. New Yorkers won't see a subway fare increase or service cuts. Kentucky and Ohio hoping for much-needed repairs on the Brent Spence Bridge. And in Louisiana, the Calcasieu Bridge in desperate need of a fix. But the White House acknowledges many projects will take time.
When will Americans start to see this in their communities in a very real way?
Well, there are some components that we are going to see rather quickly and some that will take a little bit more time. This is not designed to be a stimulus bill. This is designed to be something that is spent out over time.
So some of this could take some time. Of course, Cecilia Vega joins us now from the White House. Cecilia, bottom line here is the president has seen the polls. Did he need this win?
Oh, he definitely needed this win, Lindsay, and the president, this White House, his administration, Democrats are now keenly aware of how much he needs to get out there into the country and convince Americans that this infrastructure plan will directly benefit them and their families, and that is exactly what he's going to do. So keenly aware of those polls. He starts in New Hampshire tomorrow, where he will be visiting a crumbling bridge. He then heads to Michigan, where he's going to be talking about electric vehicles. Given those polls, given those midterms in just a year, Lindsay, no coincidence there that those are two key battleground states where he's starting on this sales pitch.
And Cecilia, we're now learning who the key power player will be in the rollout and implementation of this bill.
Yeah, a name that most Americans are actually familiar with, former New Orleans mayor and Louisiana Lieutenant Governor Mitch Landrieu. He's essentially the checks and balances for this entire $1.2 trillion project. He's going to oversee how states get this money. He's going to make sure that there is prevention when it comes to fraud and waste. And you know this, he's no stranger to big projects like this one, given that he oversaw the recovery there in Louisiana and New Orleans post-Hurricane Katrina.
Cecilia reporting in from the White House. Thanks so much, Cecilia. Now to the pandemic and the surge in cases as the holidays approach. Cases are up 23%, and that's before families across the country will gather next week for Thanksgiving. Dr. Anthony Fauci weighed in today on those family gatherings, and this comes as more states have urged adults 18 and older to get those booster shots even before the FDA and CDC recommended. Stephanie Ramos reports.
Despite signs of a winter COVID surge, health experts say vaccinated Americans can gather for traditional holidays.
If you get vaccinated and your family's vaccinated, you can feel good about enjoying a typical Thanksgiving, Christmas, with your family and close friends.
Since the end of October, new COVID cases are up 23% across the country and up 22% among children. And there's now a growing push to expand booster shots to all adults ahead of an official decision from the FDA. New York, Arkansas, and likely New Jersey will join 4 other states in allowing booster shots for all adults. The governor and mayor of New York urging anyone who wants a booster to get one.
We got to stay ahead of COVID. So we have a tool, and it works, and that's booster shots.
Officials at a Connecticut nursing home suspect waning immunity played a role in an outbreak that infected 89 residents, killing 8. They say all but 2 residents and staff were fully vaccinated, and none of the residents had gotten a booster yet. And Lindsay, health experts say we have to be prepared for a severe flu season. Right now, the CDC is on the ground at the University of Michigan studying a sudden flu outbreak where more than 300 people have been infected in just the last week. Fewer people are getting the flu vaccine this year, and health officials want people to know it is okay to get both the COVID and flu vaccines at the same time. Lindsay.
Stephanie, thank you. Now to the murder trial of the 3 men in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. The defense called for a mistrial after the Reverend Jesse Jackson appeared in court to support Arbery's family. This comes just days after one attorney said that he didn't want any more, quote, black pastors coming here. Here's ABC's Steve Osunsami.
This is what defense lawyers were so upset about that had them calling for the whole trial to be thrown out. They noticed that jurors were reacting after seeing Reverend Jesse Jackson in one of the limited seats in the courtroom with his arms around the victim's mother as she was crying.
How many pastors does the Arbery family have? We had the Reverend Al Sharpton here earlier, last week.
This same defense lawyer has already been called a racist after the way he complained just last week about how the family of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery continues to give a seat to black pastors.
Your Honor, the seats in the public gallery of a courtroom are not like courtside seats at a Lakers game.
It was during a neighbor's testimony when Wanda Cooper broke down as prosecutors shared a photo of her son. The judge didn't agree to a mistrial, and the prosecution of the 3 white men accused of murder continues. Jurors today got to see the shotgun used in the killing.
If the wood were the T-shirt that you've described, could you show the jury how close that gun would be to that T-shirt?
It's just an approximation, but it's going to be close to the wood, close to the shirt.
The 3 men have pled not guilty, saying they were making a citizen's arrest under then Georgia law. But at the neighborhood construction site where their suspicion started, police say that the victim is never seen taking anything and was just walking around.
Steve Osunsami joins us now. Steve, walk us through what's coming up next.
So we're expecting to hear from the medical examiner, and it's also possible that we could be hearing from the victim's mother, from Wanda Cooper. The prosecution is expected to wrap up their case in the next couple of days. Then the defense, one of the defense lawyers, will have what will be his opening statements. Then the defense will go through their case. If the defense takes nearly as long as the prosecution has gone, this case could stretch well into the week of Thanksgiving and now possibly beyond. Now, one little point about Jesse Jackson. Outside court, he held a press conference, spoke to reporters, and essentially said that as long as the Arbery family is offering him a seat in the courtroom, he will take it, calling it a moral obligation. We also know this week on Thursday, black pastors across this country who have responded to the objections of them being in court are planning a protest outside the courthouse. Lindsay?
Much to the chagrin of that defense attorney, I'm sure, Steve Osunsami, our thanks to you. In Houston, a boy is now the 10th victim and the youngest killed in the crowd surge at the Astroworld Music Festival. 9-year-old Ezra Blunt, who had been hospitalized since the concert disaster, never regained consciousness and died from his injuries, his family recently confirmed. The child fell from his father's shoulders and was trampled when the crowd lost control. His family was among several to file lawsuits against performer Travis Scott and others involved in the music festival, which is now under investigation. Overseas tonight, the UK has raised the terrorism threat level after an explosion in a taxi outside of a hospital in Liverpool. The passenger, who's been identified as the suspect, was killed in the blast. The driver survived. Now authorities are on the hunt for the motive. Here's ABC's James Longman.
Tonight, this explosion outside a UK hospital declared a terrorist incident. Watch as this taxi driver pulls up outside Liverpool's women's hospital. Moments later, the roof is blown off. The driver jumps out, another man rushing to his aid. But a passenger is still inside that now burning car. Police say that person was 32-year-old terror suspect Emad al-Sualmin, killed by his homemade bomb. Details are still unclear, but the driver, named by local media as David Perry, is being praised for his quick thinking. The mayor of Liverpool saying he may have locked the car doors as he escaped so as to stop El Suamin from continuing his attack. Amazingly, Perry escaped with only minor injuries. And tonight, police carrying out a controlled explosion at an address linked to the suspect.
The British people will never be cowed by terrorism.
Not cowed, but alert. The UK's terror threat has now been raised to severe, the second highest level, meaning an attack is, quote, highly likely.
James Longman joins us now. What an incredible story of survival for that driver. James, tell us a little bit more about that decision to raise the terror threat level earlier today.
Yeah, Lindsay, well, it's gone from substantial to severe. That's to the second highest level possible. It means that an attack is, quote, highly likely. It's not because they feel that anything is likely to happen imminently in Liverpool or anywhere else. It's because of the volume of threats that security services are monitoring at the moment, and specifically because just last month, a lawmaker here, David Ames, was sadly stabbed to death by a constituent of his, and that was designated a terror act as well. And so the fact that we've had these two serious incidents in such a short period of time means that the Home Secretary decided to raise the terror threat. Meanwhile, though, a number of lines of inquiry here. We just should say in the last few minutes we've heard that there were 4 men who were originally arrested. They were at a number of addresses that were tracked down where the suspect is thought to have lived. They have now been released after questioning, but investigators say they're paying particular attention to the device that would have been constructed at one of these addresses, the device, of course, that we saw explode in that car. But they're also looking at the timing of this attack. It happened at 1 minute to 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. That is Remembrance Sunday in this country. It's where Britons stop to remember our war dead. There are memorial services all over the country, and there was one not far from this hospital. Thousands of people congregating at Liverpool Cathedral, also at the Town Hall. So there's a suggestion that there could be some link there. I think also this just kind of raises the whole issue around random attacks, small attacks, not sophisticated terror plots, but individuals who take it upon themselves to launch these sorts of attacks, and how difficult it is to stop them. But yes, this taxi driver was a hero if he did indeed lock those doors to stop this man getting out and continuing his attack. But tonight, here in Britain, a lot of people are calling the emergency services heroes, the police and others who sprang into action. Minutes. They were there in minutes to stop this thing from getting out of control. And sadly, this is something that British security services are now used to, having to respond very quickly to these sorts of threats. It is not comforting to know that this is now part of our lives, but it is comforting to know that our emergency services are so well equipped at dealing with them. Lindsay?
Indeed. James Longman, thanks so much. And a pair of political notes tonight. 81-year-old Vermont Democrat Senator Patrick Leahy, currently the longest-serving member in the U.S. Senate and third in line from the presidency, announced today that he will retire rather than seek a 9th term next year. And in Texas, Beto O'Rourke, the former House Democrat who ran unsuccessful campaigns for both the Senate and the White House, he now says he'll go for another run for governor of the Lone Star State in 2022. And when we come back, the search for a gunman after at least 5 teenagers were shot and wounded near a high school. We explore why so many of us don't understand what the other is texting, what all those acronyms and emojis even mean. But up next, Steve Bannon, defiant, promising to go on the offense after being charged with criminal contempt of Congress. We'll break it all down for you coming up next.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, What You Need to Know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
7 astronauts were forced into the International Space Station into their lifeboats after space junk came dangerously close. They went into capsules as solely a precaution. U.S. officials condemned a Russian anti-satellite missile test that put astronauts' lives in danger, but they did not confirm if it created the debris. Now to the criminal case against longtime Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Bannon surrendered to authorities today, but remained defiant. He warned that this would be the misdemeanor case from hell, an echo of what he said on his podcast the day before the January 6th insurrection, that all hell is going to break loose. Here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl.
As he turned himself in today, Steve Bannon was as defiant as ever.
We're going to go on the offense. We're tired of playing defense. We're going to go on the offense on this and stand by.
Bannon is charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress and faces up to 2 years behind bars if found guilty for refusing to comply with a subpoena issued by the House committee investigating the January 6th riot. The committee says Bannon is key to its investigation, pointing to what he said on his podcast the day before the riot.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
Bannon told Trump supporters, quote, "This is your time in history."
All I can say is strap in. You have made this happen, and tomorrow it's game day.
But Bannon has refused to testify because he says that former President Trump told him not to. Democrats say his prosecution should be a warning to everyone else who refuses to cooperate. But Bannon today was full of bluster, vowing to fight back.
I'm never going to back down, and they took on the wrong guy this time.
Mr. Bannon, on
They took on the wrong guy.
Bannon defiant. They're not backing down. Jonathan Karl joins us now. And John, we heard that tough talk from Steve Bannon, but now other Trump officials are also refusing to cooperate with the House committee. What could they be facing?
Well, they could be facing exactly the same thing. In fact, former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows is likely to be held in contempt by the January 6th committee in the coming weeks. That would put him in direct legal jeopardy, just as Bannon now faces. And also, Lindsay, interestingly, if that went to the full House, as it did with Bannon, and the House voted him in contempt, he would be the first former member of the House to be held in contempt of Congress, the first in American history.
Jonathan Karl, thanks so much.
Thank you.
For more on Bannon's case, we bring in former federal prosecutor Con Nowadays. Con, thank you so much for joining us. Steve Bannon said that he's going on the offensive here. Over recent years, of course, we've seen officials in both Democratic as well as Republican administrations held in contempt of Congress. But a criminal indictment for this is extremely rare. So just how hard a case will this be for prosecutors?
It will be a hard case, and for the simple reason that they rarely charge these. Frankly, in the last close to 12 years, there's only been 4 criminal referrals from Congress to DOJ, and those referrals died on the vine. DOJ declined them. This is the first time since the 1970s, by my count, that a criminal indictment has actually been issued by DOJ for contempt of Congress.
Now, Bannon claimed that President Biden ordered the Attorney General to prosecute him. Do you buy that? And more generally, how does the Justice Department shield itself from political pressures in heated cases like this?
Number one, I don't buy it at all. I think Merrick Garland has made it clear that, and DOJ as an institution makes it clear that they take action independent of the president and political viewpoints with cases like this. So I don't see that. How DOJ protects itself is to make sure that there are no lines of communication between the executive branch and DOJ about this case. And it would surprise me if there was any communication between the president's office and DOJ about this prior to bringing charges.
And Bannon is defying Congress by claiming executive privilege. What do you make of his legal argument?
Well, that's a standard argument for all of these contempt cases in which somebody who's called before Congress who used to work in the administration says they don't have to come. The issue for Bannon here is that the conduct that Congress is looking into happens 3 years after Bannon was a member of the executive branch and worked for former President Trump. So that's number one. And number two, the issue is Biden and the Biden administration has shown an inclination to waive executive privilege with respect to Congress's inquiry into the January 6th insurrection.
And lastly, Bannon faces fines and up to a year behind bars per charge if he's convicted. Beyond that, which of course would be a huge penalty, can prosecutors force him to comply with these congressional subpoenas?
They cannot force him. He can take them to trial, he can lose, and he can go to jail. So ultimately, there's a lot of pressure on him, but ultimately it will really depend on how it hashes out in court and whether he takes it to trial and to put the prosecutors to their test.
Khan Nowadays, we thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thank you.
Still ahead here on Prime, the pilot and passenger forced to ditch their plane right in the middle of a bay. The radio host who tried to say the Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax. Here's the results of a defamation suit filed by those grieving parents. And the response to the announced goals made in that major climate summit have been mixed, to say the least. We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day: diversity on Sesame Street.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
The mysterious boyfriend. What does he even do over there? Tell me everything.
You'll be okay. No one knows about us.
He's the chief executive and she's a kid.
You have committed multiple federal crimes.
I want to talk to my lawyer. The White House disposed of me like a piece of trash. And they will do the same to you.
Impeachment, American Crime Story. Tuesdays at 10, only on FX. Available now on demand.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 Black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Now, with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
13 siblings held captive by their parents.
Now, finally hear from the family.
I don't know how you had the courage.
Escape from a house of horrors.
The only word I know to call it is hell.
Friday night, November 19th on ABC. Friday morning, the one, the only Sting.
This is the sound of rushing water.
Performing just for you. Sting, Friday, only on Good Morning America. Sponsored by CarMax.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
Welcome back, everyone. The climate summit COP26 that was billed as humanity's last best chance to save the planet is now over. Beyond the high-profile speeches, the summit was filled with 2 weeks of painstaking negotiations to try to get a meaningful deal to the finish line. This past weekend, world leaders came to an agreement that the UN Secretary General said did not go far enough. So we wanted to take a look at what's in it by the numbers. The 10-page document emphasizes the importance of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Scientists say that target can only be met if global emissions are reduced by 45% by 2030. Right now, they are projected to rise by almost 14% by then. The pact does leave the door open for claiming success if warming is limited to 2 degrees Celsius. If that threshold is passed, according to the UN, that's where the consequences of climate change become disastrous for human life. 23 countries announced new plans to stop using coal power during the summit's first week. But in a last-minute change, 2 countries, India and China, were able to get the language changed in the agreement from phase out the use of coal to phase down. The agreement calls on all 197 countries that signed onto it to report their progress next year at COP27, which will take place in Egypt. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. Why millennials, Gen Xs, Gen Zers, and boomers may read the same text message rather differently. And the university that struck a deal with some of its students over, quote, unlivable dorms. But first, to look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
13 siblings held captive by their parents.
A survival story like you've never seen.
My 2 little sisters right now, chained up.
Never before seen.
You got another room in the front right here with 2 kiddos in the bed.
Now, finally hear from the family.
I don't know how you had the courage.
I think it was like us coming so close to death so many times.
Escape from a house of horror.
The only word I know to call it is hell.
Friday night, November 19th on ABC.
We will look at what has been happening this week.
And we'll talk about it
later on the roundtable.
Good morning and welcome to This Week.
Good morning and welcome to This Week.
Good morning and welcome to This Week.
Historic. Join us Sunday morning celebrating 40 years of ABC's This Week.
Lady Gaga is coming to GMA.
Probably one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me.
And she's bringing a few friends.
What can I tell you?
Al, Selma, Jared, and Adam. This week on Good Morning America.
You're welcome.
In time, spring will turn to fall.
From the global resources of ABC News. From morning through daytime, evening, late night, 24/7. The race against time. Climate crisis, saving tomorrow. What can we do now? The groundbreaking reports, all this November on ABC News.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Pivotal moments inside the Kenosha County Courthouse.
So when you consider this case, look for the truth.
Prosecutors addressing the jury for a final time, trying to convince them 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse had intent to kill.
This is a case in which a 17-year-old teenager killed 2 unarmed men and severely wounded a third person with an AR-15 that did not belong to him. This isn't a situation where he was protecting his home or his family.
Rittenhouse is facing multiple charges, including homicide for shooting and killing 2 people and injuring another during protests last year over the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
Everything this community went through, the only person who shot and killed anyone was the defendant.
The teen and his attorneys claim he was acting in self-defense.
When my client shot Joseph Rosenbaum, he feared for his life. He feared because of the prior threats, the prior statements, and the violent acts that had been witnessed by my client.
The judge now allowing jurors to consider lesser charges, which could be a break for the prosecution. In an unusual moment, sending the jury out of the courtroom to speak with attorneys about whether it was clear to jurors the lesser charges should not be considered if they find Rittenhouse acted in self-defense.
This is a more complicated case than most, than any, frankly, that I can remember.
Police in Aurora, Colorado say multiple people had been shot at a park near a school.
ABC News confirming at least 6 people are hurt, ranging in age from 14 to 18. It's not clear if they suffered gunshot wounds. The incident happened not far from a high school. Still not clear if the suspect is in custody. Aurora, Colorado may be familiar to you because it was also the scene of a mass shooting back in 2012 at a movie theater. 12 people were killed in that shooting.
A pilot and a passenger escaped a watery plane crash in Tampa. Their small plane ditching in the bay near the airport, sinking to the bottom. The pilot diverting to Tampa, reporting engine problems and trying to land at the time. A seaplane coming to their rescue. No one was hurt.
Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones was found liable today for damages in lawsuits brought by families who lost loved ones in the Newtown school shootings.
Alex Jones was found liable by default. Connecticut Superior Court Judge Barbara Bellis said Jones and his companies, including InfoWars, failed to turn over financial and analytical information as required by law. 8 families of victims sued Jones for defamation after he called the 2012 massacre at Sandy Hook Elementary School a hoax. There's a hearing next year to decide how much Jones will have to pay.
Howard University and its protesting students have reached a deal. For the last month, students have been camping out in tents to protest what they call unbelievable housing conditions. In a statement, the school confirmed a resolution with more details to come. More than 150 students at the prestigious HBCU occupied the Blackburn Center in the heart of campus, sleeping in a tent city outside. Students claim they had experienced flooding in the hallways and mold growing inside their rooms, many of them sharing images online that have gone viral using the hashtag #BlackburnTakeover. The university initially pushed back on the claims, saying all but one dorm had been renovated the last 5 years, and the complaints concern less than 1% of the rooms. Following news of the deal, in a statement, Blackburn Takeover spokesperson said, "We have achieved increased security, transparency, and accountability."
New Year's Eve in Times Square will look a lot different from when we rang it in 2021. People will be allowed once again in Times Square. City leaders expected to outline more details tomorrow, but we're being told anyone in the crowd, it's going to be strict restrictions, must be fully vaccinated or provide proof of a negative COVID test.
We turn now to a tool that nearly everyone uses, talking about text messaging. But everything that you need a text translator, not everyone texts the same way. And in some cases, what you text may actually give away your age, like using the crying, laughing emoji. That is so passé. This Gen Xer sat down with a legendary boomer, millennial, and Gen Zer to try to find this common language. It seems as if we're living in the future, an age of connectivity reaching every part of the globe. And yet, what does this even mean? IMO, TIL, LMK. We haven't been texting for relatively long, but it seems now half of us don't know what the other half is saying. Okay, boomer. So we went to the place that knows a thing or two about evolution. The American Museum of Natural History, where great minds across 4 generations could finally explain just what we're talking about. All right, everybody, so here we are at the Hall of the Universe at the American Museum of Natural History. And what better place, because we're talking about evolution of the planets and this world, and now we're really talking about the evolution of how we communicate and texting. We have Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is an astrophysicist and author of Cosmic Queries, Teffy Pessoa, InStyle host and TikTok star, Davis Burleson, TikTok host of What's Poppin' with Davis, created by Fallen Media. So thank you all for joining me and hopefully enlightening us all. We're gonna play a game here. So do you know what that means, Neil? Do you know what the skeleton means?
Not in emoji, in the emoji verse.
You see the skeleton, so this is funny.
So rolling on the floor laughing is too old school.
Would not have known what that meant. ROFL.
Really?
Yeah.
Rolling on the
Okay, I
floor
changed it. Me neither. I'm so young.
So what you're saying is, it's not good enough to be rolling on the floor laughing. You have to have died from that.
Yes.
Deceased.
You have to
Dead.
be dying of laughter. So what do we think about green texting bubbles? If you see a green texting bubble, I'm gonna say.
Oh yeah, you want blue all the way.
If you like someone and it's green.
Call it quits.
And especially if it's a green bubble, you don't know. You don't know if they got it. You don't know if it went through.
It's just in the ether. It's lost in the universe. There'll be some planet discovered, and all the green texts will be on that planet. NASA will report this.
The 3 dots that appear when somebody else is supposedly responding, but sometimes I'm waiting for the response and then nothing comes through.
So 3.
I don't mind. I like the 3 dots, so you can see when they're texting.
I downloaded this GIF that was the 3 dots. So when someone was pissing me off, you guessed it.
A relationship.
I would just send the GIF and then close the chat. If you want to be like me, 31 and single, take this advice.
She says she's 31. Do you know, in your 31st year, you will live your billionth second?
Why is that the most romantic thing anybody's ever told me when I was engaged?
What do we think about red receipts? I kind of like.
I love when somebody has red receipts on.
I want to know that you saw my text.
Half the time, I feel like they don't know that they have it on,
right.
so I
It's
just
a
won't
mistake.
tell them.
Right,
And you can see
right.
when somebody's read your text and they don't respond, and it's
These don't apply.
Oh, really?
So sometimes I might have a thought that is not covered in only 4 emojis. Is that allowed?
That's crazy.
Okay, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
So we're gonna write.
Well, are we creating meaning for these?
No,
Or-
I think that they have.
what the emoji means.
You don't have to show off.
Okay, well.
Davis knows. Okay, Davis, what does this mean?
The nail
I
polish?
said that it meant like getting pretty, like getting
That's
dolled
almost so
up.
obvious
Is
that it can't be true.
Is that okay? What
so
is
this
it?
is very Gen Z.
Okay.
And very like TikTok, but this usually means gay or sassy. You're being like sassy. If you were to say something sassy, then you would use this emoji.
I put something in español, primer muerta que sencilla, which means
she's
she'd rather be
fancy.
dead than like simple looking. So
Oh.
she fancy, or like, for example, if you were like, where'd you get those shoes? And I would say, I don't know, they were free.
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
something a little sassy, attitude-y.
All right, what did he have, Neil?
So I'm 0 for 1.
All right, yeah, you and me both.
0 for 1.
All right, this, I mean, I just thought it was sad. I don't know.
It has several meanings, but a lot of times it'd be like, you're so sweet, or like, thank you, or oh, that made my heart happy.
A kitten was found in a drain. Like you put, oh my God, or like, no.
I've never seen it. I've never used it. So it looks, the mouth is downturned, so it looks sad.
Can you make the face?
So I just said, I'm worried about you.
Right, and that could apply.
Yeah, it can mean that. It can have so many meanings.
I think this is
declare
multitude.
from this moment,
yes.
this should be, I'm worried about you.
I want to see your most recent emojis.
So I used like 3 emojis. I'll do a thumbs up. Okay. That's a good one. I did this one once.
One time.
Okay.
That must have been good.
Okay. I did that one, you know.
Exciting.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah, you looked at something.
and I do the one with the celebration. Congratulations.
Oh, the congratulations.
Okay. Yes, that one's cute. I like that.
I worry that people will lose the ability to communicate their feelings in words.
Well, we know what people meant with hieroglyphics.
That's a good comeback.
Again, I'm sounding like an old fart.
But a romantic old fart.
romantic.
Okay, thank you.
know?
I'll take that.
All right, last one. What did you think of this? Neil?
Hat. Well, she's not wrong.
That's cap. That's what it means.
It means lying or exaggerating.
Yes, you're lying.
Now, tell me the correlation.
I don't know.
Oh, you had another question mark.
So if you said, my shirt is yellow, I'd be like, I've never said this out loud. That's cap.
So here you're going to circle what bothers you.
I'm good.
Do you just have question marks on everything?
No, I understood everything, top to bottom.
You understood everything?
Yes, I did.
All right, well, help me understand because I didn't know.
Let me guide you through this.
Yes, so help me if you would. What is the eye, mouth, eye?
So that was a trend. That was a trend on TikTok in early quarantine, and it kind of means like you're in shock a little bit. It kind of just means your face
First of
is
all,
kind of still.
I love how you have a time frame of like that was out of the
so
era.
like basically, so that is a little out.
You know,
yeah,
right?
So that honestly, that's a little cringy now. That's a little out.
What is SKSKSK?
Sorry, that's the only thing I didn't know. Sorry.
Do it.
I didn't know the
okay.
S.
It's
Laughing. You never get that whistle laugh?
What do we think about audio messages?
Oh, that means it's serious.
Yes, that means hold the phone, let's listen.
I put on the AirPods, I'm like, okay.
So I actually don't like them because it goes away. And so what if I've like pressed it by mistake and then I go and I get distracted and then
the settings.
Oh, you can?
You can keep them,
Look
yes.
at you.
You know what you're doing. Do you send audio messages ever?
Me, never.
What do you think about K? I have a feeling that Neil, you don't like it.
Are you so lazy you can't say okay?
Okay,
This is
I
when
feel
I block
the same
somebody.
way.
That's immediately when I block you. Like you obviously, you're not telling me what you're really mad about. And then the ellipses, I'm down, ... You're obviously not.
So to me, an ellipsis is just a beautiful occasion to take pause
Like a sunset.
and reflect on what was just said and get ready for more to come.
If we're not seeing each other in person and we're not talking on the phone anymore, there need to be certain ways that we communicate that energy.
Yes.
And that's what it is. It's
like
just energy.
the words with the claps in between, like it gives you
Emphasis.
the feeling
Yes.
of how the person is delivering.
So
I
good.
feel like I am building the alliance with the older side too.
Thank
Like,
you. We could chill.
Come with us.
It's fun over here, I promise.
Come with us.
Which way do we go?
Well, help me, because I'm going to now rely on
We
you
will help
because
you.
Neil, I'm going to assume you have no idea because I don't know. What is IYKYK?
Every time
If
I
you
say
know-
this.
if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
FWIW, I do know this one. Do you know this one, Neil?
Nope.
I don't know this one.
I
don't
think
know
it's
it
for
either.
what it's worth.
For what it's
Oh,
worth.
good one.
But when would I
Right?
say that?
I don't know, and I would
For
ever
what it's
say
worth.
that.
I'm saying it in a way to like soften it. Like, for whatever this is worth to you, maybe it's not a big deal at all. I just want to put this out there.
I
for
see.
whatever
You don't want to
it's
sound
worth.
Like, I'm going to throw it at you. If you want to pick it up, pick it up.
IMO. Oh, I know that. You know this one?
in my humble opinion.
Right. Look at you, Neil.
In my opinion.
Right.
Don't be humble anymore.
TLDR.
Oh, I've seen this all the time.
Yes.
Let's say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3, it's.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Too long didn't read.
Too
long didn't read.
Oh.
Okay.
What is it when
My
people say?
daughter texted that to me one time.
Oh, no.
You feel old now, right? I do. All right, last one. ABCNL. Anybody know?
Yes. Let's say it together.
ABC News Live. Yeah, look, I love that. I love that.
Oh, ABC News Live.
Yes. That was so much fun. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of texts about why I had sneakers on. I didn't realize you were going to see below. But anyway, our thanks to Neil, Teffy, and Davis. By the way, Neil was quick to point out that the museum has just created its own TikTok account as a way to communicate with the younger generation, a 150-year-old institution that is still learning new tricks. Next, to Adele getting personal, the 15-time Grammy Award winner reveals just how she's finding happiness after some rather difficult years. Janae Norman has the details.
Adele hitting all the right notes.
setting the tone of the primetime performance from the famed Los Angeles Griffith Observatory, belting out both her classics
When we're young,
and new songs from her latest album 30, out this Friday.
I was a child, every single thing could blow my mind. Soaking it all off for fun, but now I only soak up wine.
All before a star-studded crowd, including Melissa McCarthy and Lizzo, who was spotted singing alongside Oprah. The superstar sitting down with Oprah for a one-on-one interview.
But nothing is as scary as what I've been through over the last 2-3 years behind closed doors.
Saying she has the courage to bare her soul publicly on her chart-topping albums because of what she's endured privately, discussing her divorce and co-parenting with ex-husband Simon Konecki.
I think Simon probably saved my life, to be honest with you, trusting with my life. Him and Angelo, they were angels sent to me. That's how I feel.
Adele also acknowledging her son Angelo during the concert.
This is the first time that my son has ever seen me perform. And you look so beautiful and so handsome and smart.
Candidly opening up to Oprah about her weight loss.
I definitely really contributed towards me getting my mind right.
It sharpened everything.
Without a shadow of a doubt. It gave me real purpose.
And dating after divorce. She recently confirmed her relationship with top sports agent Rich Paul.
This relationship is the first time you've actually
loved myself and been open to loving and being loved by someone else.
She brought down the house with Easy on Me, the first single off 30, which has shattered records for the most streamed song.
What a voice and venue. Our thanks to Janae for that. Before we go tonight, the image of the day. President Biden, after signing that massive $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill by the South Lawn of the White House. There's so few things voted on these days with buy-in from members of both parties. But after several years and multiple failed attempts by previous presidents, this deal finally made it across the finish line. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up the next hour, our conversation with former New Jersey Governor Christie, who's out with a new book about saving the Republican Party from conspiracy theories and Biden policies. And what's next for pop superstar Britney Spears now that her conservatorship has been terminated?
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi! Is this mic on? Can you hear me out there?
behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Mr. President, do you know a woman named Monica Lewinsky?
I do.
How long has this been going on?
We have to be really careful.
Someone needs to go public.
I want to say one thing to the American people. These allegations are false.
This is my real life we're talking about, and I'm scared.
Impeachment, American Crime Story. Tuesdays at 10, only on FX. Available now on demand.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States. It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke officially announced that he is running for governor of Texas today. O'Rourke became widely known during the 2018 midterms, where he narrowly lost his Senate bid against Republican Ted Cruz. He was also a 2020 presidential candidate, dropping out the crowded race just before the Iowa caucuses. Texas incumbent Governor Greg Abbott was already campaigning against O'Rourke even before today's announcement. Californians are taking a hit to their wallets at the pump. Gas prices there are the highest in the country for the second straight day, averaging nearly $4.70 per gallon. Meanwhile, the national average sits around $3.40 a gallon. The American Automobile Association says heavy rains in northwestern California that caused production issues are partially to blame. And the woman who snuck into former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property was deported back to China today. An ICE spokesperson told ABC News. Yujin Chang was convicted in September 2019 of lying to a federal officer and for entering restricted grounds. Despite suspicions from investigators, she was never formally charged with espionage. After years of discussion spanning multiple presidents, at long last, it is Infrastructure Week in Washington. President Biden officially signed that $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill into law this afternoon. It's the most significant investment in a generation in America's roads, bridges, ports, and more. But how soon will Americans see the benefits? Our chief White House correspondent Cecilia Vega reports from the White House.
Yeah. At the White House today, surrounded by lawmakers from both parties, President Biden signing that massive infrastructure bill, a key piece of his economic agenda, and now a campaign promise fulfilled.
My message to the American people is this: America's moving again, and your life is going to change for the better.
It is a much-needed win in the face of polls showing his approval sinking. Today, the president saying he's focused on what Americans are talking about at the dinner table and showing the country is catching up to other nations.
Now, according to the World Economic Forum, we rank 13th in the world. Well, that's about to change. Things are going to turn around in a big way. Because of this law, next year will be the first year in 20 years American infrastructure investment will grow faster than China's. We'll once again have the best roads, bridges, ports, and airports over the next decade.
The massive $1.2 trillion plan sets aside $110 billion to repair aging highways and bridges, $39 billion for public transportation, and $65 billion for high-speed internet. The president describing families struggling to find access.
No parent should have to sit in a parking lot at a fast food restaurant again, just so their child can use the internet to do their homework. That's over.
32 Republicans voted for the plan. Ohio Senator Rob Portman, a lead negotiator.
This is what can happen when Republicans and Democrats decide we're going to work together to get something done.
On the other side, moderate Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona.
This is what it looks like when elected leaders set aside differences, shut out the noise,
and focus on delivering results on the issues that matter most to everyday Americans.
For some Americans, the impact will be felt immediately. New Yorkers won't see a subway fare increase or service cuts. Kentucky and Ohio hoping for much-needed repairs on the Brent Spence Bridge. And in Louisiana, the Calcasieu Bridge in desperate need of a fix. But the White House acknowledges many projects will take time.
When will Americans start to see this in their communities in a very real way?
Well, there are some components that we are going to see rather quickly and some that will take a little bit more time. This is not designed to be a stimulus bill. This is designed to be something that is spent out over time.
We'll take a bit to see that. Our thanks to Cecilia. Now to the criminal case against longtime Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Bannon surrendered to authorities today but remained defiant. He warned that this would be the misdemeanor case from hell, an echo of what he said on his podcast the day before the January 6th insurrection, that all hell is going to break loose. Here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
As he turned himself in today, Steve Bannon was as defiant as ever.
We're going to go on the offense. We're tired of playing defense. We're going to go on the offense on this and stand by.
Bannon is charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress and faces up to 2 years behind bars if found guilty for refusing to comply with a subpoena issued by the House committee investigating the January 6th riot. The committee says Bannon is key to its investigation, pointing to what he said on his podcast the day before the riot.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow.
Bannon told Trump supporters, quote, "This is your time in history."
All I can say is strap in. You have made this happen, and tomorrow it's game day.
But Bannon has refused to testify because he says that former President Trump told him not to. Democrats say his prosecution should be a warning to everyone else who refuses to cooperate. But Bannon today was full of bluster, vowing to fight back.
I'm never going to back down, and they took on the wrong guy this time.
Mr. Bannon, on January 5th.
They took on the wrong guys.
Our thanks to Jonathan Karl. We are joined now by ABC News contributor and former New Jersey Governor Christie. After ending his own run for the White House in 2016, he became a backer of then-candidate Donald Trump and served as an informal advisor when Trump became president before breaking with him over Trump's false claims about the 2020 election and the January 6th attack. Christie is out with a new book this week, Republican Rescue, Saving the Party from Truth Deniers, Conspiracy Theorists, and the Dangerous Policies of Joe Biden. Thank you so much for being here, Governor.
Thank you, Lindsay.
So we're going to get to the book in just a moment. Congratulations on it. First of all, I'd like to start with news of the day for a moment. Of course, Steve Bannon turning himself in today on those criminal contempt charges. As a former federal prosecutor, how do you see this going for him and others like him, like Mark Meadows, who are refusing to comply with the Select Committee's investigation?
Well, I think that Meadows and Bannon could be in 2 different situations.
Yeah, okay.
You know, Bannon was not an employee of the federal government, not an employee of the White House. And so I think it's very tough for him to claim that he's covered by executive privilege when he's outside of that White House orbit. Mark Meadows, as the White House chief of staff, clearly was an employee of the White House and close to the president. So we'll see how the courts deal with those, whether they deal with them the same or not, because the third factor is this. Donald Trump's no longer the president. So the ability to exert executive privilege is in the president's hands, and Joe Biden has said he won't exert executive privilege over this. So it's going to be a very interesting legal case. I think Bannon is in the worst position, and Meadows slightly better.
He's been a private citizen, of course, since at least 2017. And just to follow up on that, how likely do you think that the former president will be held accountable through the Select Committee's investigation?
Unlikely, I think. You know, and it depends on what you mean by accountable. I mean, they're going to raise, I would suspect, a lot of factual issues that Donald Trump's going to ultimately have to answer if he wants to remain in public life in any way. But in terms of direct accountability legally, I still think it's unlikely that we wind up prosecuting former presidents. It's just not in the American history, and I doubt it will happen. But, you know, you never know, given whatever the circumstances might turn out to be. But I think unlikely that will happen.
All right, let's get to the book. You write, before Republicans can rescue America, we need to rescue ourselves. And you write in great detail about the conspiracy theories and lies surrounding the election in 2020. Have you seen any indication that Republicans feel that they want to be rescued, especially because very few in power at this particular point seem to be condemning Trump or his message?
I do, and it's actually pretty timely. The Des Moines Register came out with a poll today where they asked Iowa Republicans, who, as you know, are some of the most conservative Republicans in America, where's your greater loyalty, to the Republican Party or to Donald Trump? 62% said the Republican Party. 26% said Donald Trump. So that's a big change, I'd say, Lindsay, from a year ago. And I think, we're in an instant gratification society. Everyone wants change to happen like that. And it often doesn't. But we're nearly a year since the last election, nearly 10 months since Donald Trump's out of office. And I think you see the emotion starting to drain out of it a little bit, and people starting to make an evaluation. So I think you have to tell people the truth. We have to be the party of truth. And if we're not the party of truth, then we're going to have a hard time getting power back and being able to lead the country in a different direction.
You spent about the last third of the book really talking about how Republicans need to focus on the future, let go of the grievances of the past. Of course, today, President Biden signed into law the bipartisan infrastructure bill, but many of the Republicans who were part of that, who backed it, are now being targeted for doing so. How does that exemplify focusing on the future and the desires and needs of Americans?
Well, the people who are targeting folks are not. And so this is a discussion and an argument that has to happen within the party. And the book is an attempt to start to create that argument and that conversation inside the party so it can be resolved. But remember this, too. The 19 members of the United States Senate from the Republican Party who voted for the bill did not suffer the same attacks. And even Mitch McConnell voted yes on this bill. So I think you're seeing some of those divisions. And I think you're going to see a lot more conversation about this over the course of the next year or two.
Looking now to the midterm elections, if Republicans are to win back the House or the Senate or both, would that potentially embolden those who have gone along with the idea of the conspiracy theories of the lies surrounding the election? If there is to be a return to power, how would there end up being any kind of reckoning within the Republican Party?
Depends on how those campaigns are run. If those campaigns are run the way Glenn Youngkin ran his campaign in Virginia and the way Jack Ciattarelli ran his campaign in New Jersey, where we won the Virginia governorship and we won a number of seats in the two houses of the New Jersey State House, even though we came a bit short on the governorship. What you saw in both those races where they all talked about tomorrow and education, lower taxes, less spending. They were not federal issues, and there was certainly nothing about the 2020 election. And in fact, both Glenn Youngkin and Jack Ciattarelli affirmatively asked the president, former president, not to come and campaign. So it depends on how the races are run in the competitive districts, Lindsay. If they're run in a forward-looking way, then I think there is a mandate. If they're not, then there may not be.
I know that you've said that you'll make your decision about if you're going to run for president after the midterms are over. How do you respond to critics who say, look, when you left office in New Jersey, you had low ratings, that you've already had a failed bid for president, and now you've separated yourself from arguably the most popular person in your own party? How is that a recipe for success for running again?
Well, all I know is that when I ran for re-election in 2013, I got 60% of the vote and 51% of the Hispanic vote, over 20% of the African-American vote. Not a lot of Republicans can boast that type of record in terms of how they've interacted with the voters. And so if I decide to run in 2024, it'll be based upon the things that we're talking about then, what's important, and either you make the sale with the voters or you don't. But you have to have confidence in yourself, and you have to have confidence in the ideas you put forward. If I'm in that position, then I'll do it. And if I'm not, I won't.
You've known the former president for many years. Do you think if he does decide to run again, that he'd be able to let go of the grievances of the past and focus on the important things, crime, border, the economy? If he were to be able to do that, could you potentially support him again?
Look, I hope that he does that a lot sooner than any decision he makes on the election. You know, right now we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris trying to take the country in a particular direction. They won the election. They get to make those choices. We need to be a strong voice against it. And I would hope Donald Trump would be that strong voice. But on the future and who's going to support who, we don't even know who's running yet. So let's wait on who's going to support who till the future. But what I will say is this, that when you're not telling the truth about the last election results, that is a big strike against you.
Give our viewers a taste of the book, because in the subtitle you talk about the dangerous policies of Joe Biden. What's chief among them, would you say?
Well, I think there's a few things. First, what I consider to be reckless spending that's going on in areas that, quite frankly, the American people are not sure they really want to have spending in those areas. Second, increased taxes. Third, the foreign policy personified by the withdrawal in Afghanistan and the incompetent way that was handled. Our problems in Europe, where we had real problems with France regarding the deal we made with Australia on submarines. There's been a number of missteps in this administration so far, but the biggest one is trying to make the government a bigger part of our lives every day. I don't think that's what most Americans want, and I think to have a bigger, more powerful, more intrusive government is dangerous.
Christie, former governor of my home state of New Jersey, the Garden State, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Lindsay, great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the book. Once again, his new book, Republican Rescue, Saving the Party from Truth Deniers, Conspiracy Theorists, and the Dangerous Policies of Joe Biden, goes on sale tomorrow. Now to the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, the teenager accused of killing 2 men and injuring a third at a police protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Today we heard the dramatic closing arguments. The prosecutor said Rittenhouse provoked the incident when he raised and pointed his gun. The defense, though, continues to argue this was self-defense. Here's ABC's Terry Moran.
In his closing argument, prosecutor Thomas Binger using drone video from the night of the shootings to highlight what he says was the critical moment on that fatal night. Kyle Rittenhouse out in the crowd of protesters putting down a fire extinguisher and raising his AR-15 rifle.
You're not allowed to run around and point your gun at people. This is the provocation. This is what starts this incident. You cannot claim self-defense against a danger you create.
It was Rittenhouse who was the real threat, Binger argued, mocking the defense claim that the teenager was acting in self-defense.
The crowd has the right to try and stop an active shooter. They have a right to protect themselves. The defendant is not the only one in the world who has the right to self-defense.
Defense lawyer Mark Richards firing back, showing the moment Rittenhouse got kicked in the head, arguing he wasn't an active shooter.
Kyle was not an active shooter. That is a buzzword that the state wants to lash onto. Whenever Kyle was there, he reacted to people attacking him.
And Rittenhouse's lawyer also went after the protesters, showing how downtown Kenosha was engulfed in flames and saying his client had been unfairly maligned by prosecutors from the start.
They had to do something. They had to charge the white supremacist, who isn't a white supremacist. Every person who was shot was attacking Kyle.
Our thanks to Terry Moran for that. Now to the next chapter for pop superstar Britney Spears. She is finally freed of her nearly 14-year-long conservatorship, but her fight is not yet over. She has a team behind her, and this time they're people of her choosing. Here's ABC's Kaylee Hartung with the latest.
Britney Spears is regaining control of her life and fortune. Britney calling it the best day ever and thanking her fans in this post on Instagram with the hashtag #FreedBritney.
Take it, take no more. Never felt like this before.
Britney's hard-fought freedom comes with safety nets now in place to protect her personally and financially.
There are safety nets in place to support her.
Britney is in a position to succeed, yes.
Her conservator of person, Jody Montgomery, will stay in her life to help with the transition, a care plan submitted to the court under seal. And the temporary conservator of her estate, put in place after her father was suspended, will continue to work for Britney with limited administrative powers. Her attorney describing this role as a concierge service for her financial safety and well-being. While Britney will be able to make her own decisions, her fight in court will continue. Her attorney, Matthew Rosengard, a former federal prosecutor, saying subpoenas have been issued to Britney's father, Jamie, and her former management firm, TriStar. Among the concerns being investigated, how Britney's money was spent while she was under the conservatorship. Jamie Spears has long defended his actions during the conservatorship, arguing that his only aim was to protect his daughter and her business. But according to Rosengard, they're refusing to cooperate. David Glass, an attorney specializing in family law, says Spears could also seek damages.
In addition to the financial terms, they could also seek personal damages, damages for any harm that she felt.
So this is all long from over. Our thanks to Kaylee for that. Now to the latest on Queen Elizabeth. She was forced to miss Sunday's Remembrance Day honoring British veterans due to a sprained back. It's the second time the 95-year-old has been sidelined because of health issues in recent weeks. ABC's Maggie Rulli has more.
New worries about Queen Elizabeth's health. The 95-year-old monarch missing another high-profile event, this time reportedly out with a sprained back. Buckingham Palace making the announcement just hours before the Queen, a World War II veteran herself, was meant to attend Remembrance Day on Sunday, saying Her Majesty is disappointed that she will miss the service.
I think people will be very concerned because we haven't seen the Queen attend an in-person engagement for several weeks, and now she has had to pull out at the last minute of something that she regards as one of the most important events in her calendar.
The injury is believed to have been recent, and according to the BBC, it's been suggested that doctors were concerned about her traveling in a car and then standing for a long period of time. In her place, her son and future king, Prince Charles. This is not her only recent health issue. Just 3 weeks ago, the Queen spending the night at the hospital. The reason why, still unknown. A source telling ABC her back issue is not believed to be related to the hospital stay.
We have become so used to seeing the Queen be very visible, be at the helm, be very busy despite her advancing years. But, you know, she did say herself, none of us will live forever. And this is a reminder that she is 95, and it's possible that her timetable may have to be significantly modified in the future.
After her hospital visit, the Queen continued light duties, including Zoom engagements, with the palace insisting she's in good spirits.
Our thanks to Maggie for that. And still to come, the American journalist now out of Myanmar after months in detention, how he was finally freed. And stick around for a story that proves there is no dream too big.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
My wife had fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Christopher Steele.
The guy who picked a fight with 2 presidents, and he's lived to tell the tale.
That now infamous dossier, supposedly a tape showing prostitutes hired by Donald Trump urinating on a bed, and would be quite a tape if it in fact existed.
I said take out the PP tape.
It quickly became a question of how much of this was accurate.
This is the stuff of movies.
A lot of this is the stuff of movies.
A story of epic proportions.
Phony stuff.
It's a bunch of crap.
It changed history.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Sex, gambling, fraud, betrayal, and murder. Cutthroat Inc., the podcast. A family on a mission to find their son. A year's worth of conversations with the killer. Cutthroat Inc. Subscribe for free now on your favorite podcast app. Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. Now with so much on the line, more Americans are turning to David Muir and ABC's World News Tonight than any other program across all of television.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines from around the world. Austria began a nationwide lockdown today for unvaccinated people as COVID cases spike in the country. The restriction affects roughly 2 million Austrians who will now only be able to leave their homes to go to work, buy groceries, or get vaccinated, of course. This is happening as Europe is seeing an uptick in cases. People in the Netherlands over the weekend were seen protesting a partial 3-week lockdown, and France is now considering a lockdown of its own as cases there are also also on the rise. In Ecuador, family members of prisoners gathered outside of a morgue yesterday after riots left at least 68 inmates dead. The killings are a result of ongoing gun battles between rivaling gangs in the country's largest prison. The gangs are linked to international drug cartels. 25 others were wounded in the shootout, according to officials. American journalist Danny Fenster is free tonight after being detained in Myanmar for the past 6 months. Fenster arrived in Doha, Qatar earlier today with former U.S. diplomat Bill Richardson, who helped negotiate his release. He was convicted for allegedly spreading false information, contacting illegal organizations, and visa violations. The 25-year-old was sentenced to 11 years of hard labor after becoming one of more than 100 media members arrested in the military-controlled nation. Fenster says he's happy and healthy as he returns home. Finally tonight, the inspiring story of a Navy SEAL now taking the field on Saturdays as a college football player, and a reminder to all of us that no dream is too big to chase.
Didn't know what we were getting with Damien. He doesn't say a lot, but the toughness that he brings, it rubs off on everybody.
A lot of guys gravitated to him naturally because of his work ethic and his leadership.
Damien Jackson is 250-plus pounds of persistence.
I feel like my whole life has been non-traditional.
After graduating high school, Jackson joined the Navy, hoping to become a Navy SEAL.
I think we started with about 235 people that were trying out, and then we ended with like 25, 30.
He made the cut, working as a lead breacher.
I would handle any types of explosives, building any of the explosives, anything that has to do with getting through things, basically, like opening doors, getting through barricades. That was my job.
Some of the most difficult parts is when you lose somebody close to you. I have a tattoo on my side for some of my buddies that after my first deployment. So just to remember them. I think that's probably the biggest thing.
At 24, after 2 deployments, Jackson decided to chase another dream.
I decided that I wanted to go to college to play a sport.
Despite having never played organized football, he ended up at the University of Nebraska, trying out for the Huskers as a walk-on.
They tell you if you don't hear from us in like a week, then you didn't make the team, and didn't hear anything. So I called one of the guys, his name's Kenny Wellhite, and he said, no, you didn't make it.
He kept sending emails.
I decided to wait outside of the stadium for a couple days until I saw the coach.
His persistence paid off, but his learning curve on the field was steep.
When I first got on the team, I had no idea what they're talking about.
At 29 years old, today Jackson leads his team onto the field on game day.
I knew his dream was to be a Nebraska football player, and I just wanted him to see that through for what he did for our country.
If you have a dream, exhaust all your options, even if it meant doing something really crazy. Just keep going.
An inspiration for us all, and that's our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
An extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcast.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
The breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say.
Oh my.
Got it. And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC